Hey everybody, I'm Jay Friesen.
I'm Brian Mattson.
And you're watching Dead Reckoning, Dadlife. And in the spindle, Brian.
Yes.
I brought up and ranted, if you will, about
You added
Miley.
your voice to the chorus of voices.
Chorus of frustrations.
Tearing apart Little Miss Miley Cyrus.
Yeah, Miley Cyrus.
Yeah.
And, I made a joke that, okay, Dad, you failed somewhere.
Yeah, I think it was like Chris Rock or somebody tweeted something like, they don't grade dads, but if your daughter grows up to be a hooker, you fail.
or a slut on stage.
Yeah, it's kind of the same diff,
But interestingly, we were at, my wife was mentioning to, in fact, both of us, we were at lunch the other day, that the challenge of, one of our friends got some underwear that had super sexy or something written on the bottom for, I think, their 2-year-old or something. And it's like, we're indoctrinating these kids at 2 years old with things that are creating this kind of culture
to be a sex object.
Yeah, I mean that's the kind of environment we're raising our kids in, and it's
scary. I have two girls. You've got one. And, I think the real question, I think, for dad life is, how are we going to how are we going to raise girls in a culture, in a society like this? It's interesting. Your wife, actually, she's such an insightful person, right?
She should be on the show.
She really should just host the show.
I wholeheartedly agree.
She's so insightful. But, we had another news item come out yesterday. Right here in our hometown of Billings, Montana, actually made the Drudge Report because it's so shocking. We had a teacher at our local high school who had been convicted of rape of a 14-year-old student, who then a couple of years later went on to commit suicide. And so he was sentenced yesterday by our local district judge, and he was given, I think, 15 years, I think, all but 30 days suspended, which means he's going to spend 30 days in jail. Which is outraging the community right now. It's outraging, and it's sad. The judge has been on the bench for a couple decades. He's had a fine career. This is such a black mark. Everybody's going, what in the world is going on?
The other problem we have in Montana isn't relegated to this, because it's like my same frustration when somebody will get pulled over for their 7th DUI.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, people get 7 DUIs and things like that.
So what do you do?
Here's your wife was making the connection between Miley Cyrus and this. A lot of the mitigating circumstances why this guy got 30 days is, well, she was more mature than her age, than her, biological age. This was a consenting thing. See, what's happening in our culture right now is we've turned sex, because of the whole redefinition of marriage and everything, we've turned it from lifelong commitment, conjugal union, we've turned it into, well, two people just love each other, right? Now, when that's your standard of just two people just love each other, look, all the barriers and all the walls start going down. Now we have, a high school teacher, 30-year-old high school teacher and a 14-year-old, well, they love each other, right? Suddenly that's a mitigating circumstance where this is outrageous. She's not of an age where she can consent to this sort of thing. And, Miley Cyrus is out there, I just read a really, really good letter today, on the internet. A mother writing to her daughter, and she says, "Look, you see Miley out there, and it's so sad and pathetic. Look at me, look at me, look at me. I'm hot. I'm hot. All the boys want me. I'm hot, strutting around." And she's just writing to her daughter, "Don't do it. You are have way more dignity and worth than that kind of exhibitionism, So how do we teach our girls to have that kind of enough self-worth to not make themselves voluntarily a sex object?
Okay, now be quiet. I want to say something.
Okay, well, it's your turn. Take it away.
I think it's instilling in your child a value system outside of themselves. And by that I mean, let's use Miley as an example, okay?
Yeah.
She grew up in the Mickey Mouse Club. She grew up on the stage. She grew up, this is who I am. This is what I do. And I need to do everything to make, and that is my value. Me and myself and my career, that's my value. I'm going to do what it takes to advance that, because that is what is important. Everything else falls secondary. Being nice to people.
Apparently everything else falls in.
Having a semblance of taste. performing interesting music. I mean, all that falls secondary to I need to propagate me.
The brand.
I need to propagate
I am
me,
a brand.
the Miley Cyrus brand.
I am a brand, yes.
So by trying to instill a value system in our children outside of themselves, we can help. We can, when these things come up, it's like, well, I can do this. Well, is that what's my value? Is my value on bringing edification and good art, good music, good performances to society, or am I simply going to do what it takes to sell a record and promote my own personal brand? And the two can kind of, I think, live somewhat, harmoniously, but at the same time, what is that value system you're going to promote? Are you going to promote, welfare of others? Are you going to promote, a semblance of family? Are you going to promote a value system of community? I mean, what's that value system you're going to promote that's going to be more important than you? And ultimately, you're battling selfishness. You're saying, daughter, and we'll rail on sons in another episode.
Yeah, right.
Daughter,
it's not about you.
It's not about you.
It's just not about you. And I heard an interesting. I was at a speaking engagement last week, and one of the speakers that I heard was making a really interesting point. You're saying value system, and he was actually saying something a little more specific. He says the world talks about values. Now, values are kind of beliefs that you have, moral sentiments that you have. He says actually what we need to cultivate in our kids is not values, but virtue. Virtue is the marriage of those ideals and those values with actually acting it out in the world, being a virtuous person. And I thought that was quite insightful.
I think that is insightful. Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't think everybody can make that jump. I think they have to figure out what's important first.
Yeah, well,
what's important, then make the jump to
right.
I agree with you.
But the beautiful thing about being dads is that we can cultivate that from a young age where it becomes, we want it to be second nature. We want virtue to be a second nature. One of the great mottos in my family growing up was always, it's taken right out of the Apostle Paul's the New Testament. Always consider the interests of others ahead of yourselves. Always look out for the interests of other people. So,
right.
I mean, my dad was always, if you walk into a social engagement, you walk into a party, you see the wallflower standing over lonely in a corner that nobody's talking to, well, that's the person you make the beeline for. I mean, that's how my dad was trying to cultivate virtue in his sons. Your job is to consider the interests of others ahead of yourselves.
And I think it's going to be easy. I hope that my daughter has tastes that are more. She appreciates more of the Lady Gaga form rather than the Miley Cyrus form.
I think you're way overselling Gaga.
Okay, if it came down to the two, because it's what we talked about.
Okay, you held a gun to my head, maybe,
right?
But I think it's going to take that.
Now look at the performance.
Anything less than that.
We sat through a performance of Jordan Sparks last weekend.
Classy.
Here, she was classy. Mm-hmm. She was. She didn't come across as presumptuous. She didn't come across as full of herself or arrogant. I mean, she's like, okay, I got to be honest. And her voice was kind of shaking. She's like, I am really nervous right now. I just don't know how this is going to go. My aunt lives here. She comes to this event every single year.
Oh, cool.
And she, so there's all this stuff going on. And then she killed it.
Yeah, right. Amazing conversation. Well, you posted some video
I Will Always Love You. She nailed it. That made my night.
Mm-hmm.
And so random, completely off topic of Dadlife, but I now have a newfound respect for shows that I've previously not liked, The Voice and American Idol, because they actually produce talent.
No, I agree. I've always thought that
actually sing.
I've always thought that actually those shows by the end when you get to the semifinals, generally speaking, you're dealing with people who really can sing. I mean, they're really good.
Really good.
And Jordan Sparks, of course, being an amazing example of that. I'm glad that she.
And it was a fun show. So anyway, that's
cultivate virtue. And how do you cultivate virtue? Well, we're Christians, so we do that by reminding our kids who they are.
And question values. What do you value, and is that something you should promote? Yeah. Or is it going to lead to grinding yourself on stage?
Yeah, and the erosion of all of the of every sexual barrier. Now we have a culture where people are excusing and explaining away the rape of a 14-year-old girl on the grounds of, well, come on, she's an adult.
She's
she's
okay
come on.
with it, right?
This is a serious problem for our culture. But anyway,
that's
it's a challenging time
another
to be
topic.
raising kids in, and so that's why we have the Dad Life segment, because we're talking about being dads and being dad.
And I had this cool
fatherhood's
stroller when we were doing some screen tests. I had this cool stroller I brought in. So click back and watch that one too.
Yeah, watch our Bugaboo stroller review.
Bugaboo stroller review. We'll got some other fun stuff coming up.
Cool.
So, all right, buddy.
Good Dad Life.
I'm Jay Friesen.
And I'm Brian Mattson.
And this has been
Dad Reckoning.